Alrighty guys, some time ago Evolution Power Tools sent me this saw. So while this is not a paid advertisement, they did send me the saw and I do get to keep it. Keep that in mind when you watch the review. Now let's get on into it here. This saw is the R185 CCS and it's advertised as a multi-material saw, and it's made in the People's Republic of China. On the box, it tells you a little bit about it. It's all basically power saw stuff, nothing special at all. The front of the box here shows us it can cut up to a total of 2.5 inches deep at 90 degrees, and 1 9/16 at 45, and 1 inch at 60 degrees. And that's all real good. It tells you it's 10.8 pounds, and that's pretty good too. It includes a blade, okay, and it's a 15 amp motor. All that is right where it needs to be. I've obviously gone ahead and opened the saw. And this is the book that comes with us. And we are this first model here, this R185 CCS. And we see it's a 3,700 RPM saw. Now what that means is that it is a metal cutting saw. Metal cutting circular saws spin somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 3,800 RPMs, depending on which saw. There are a few slower ones. I believe Fine makes one that's like 2,300 RPMs. But this 3,700 is pretty normal. You get a 13-foot cord. It's a cast aluminum base. That's really important and really good. It tells you your maximum steel thickness is 1/4 inch. I can tell you right now, we're going to ignore that and we're going to cut thicker. So here's the saw. Now I have not used it at all. I opened the box, I looked at the saw, and moved it around. It's got spider webs on it from sitting in the corner and kind of being kicked around. In fact, I just put a blade on it right before I started filming. So zero use whatsoever, but has been sitting around. Some things I like about the saw already, I can tell you. One, you can buy this thing for $100, $99 on Amazon. It's got a blade lock. That's the blade lock there so that you can tighten or loosen the blade as necessary. It does have a very wide footprint on a cast aluminum base. It's got an adjustable saw guide. It's got a quick release for your angle on your shoe. It's got some locking points here for a saw guide, and it does come with a pretty decent saw rail. It's a brushed motor, and it does have the quick access for your brush access. It is a 15 amp motor, and it is heavy. Oh, it also comes with the tool to change the blade. This saw is basically a metal cutting circular saw. Now there are many saws that are metal cutting saws. Some pros and cons to each. Kind of the main thing that I think should dictate which saw you buy would be the repairability factor on one of these. I have no idea where to get Evolution Power Tool replacement parts at all. And my local supply houses, they have no idea where to get them either. I would imagine you'd have to call Evolution directly to get a set of bearings or a set of bushes or whatever. But as far as just like a known go-to, I don't know one. But this is a $100 saw. By contrast, I know exactly where to go to get replacement Milwaukee metal cutting saw parts. It's a $320 saw. So it's kind of something you gotta think about whenever you're buying a saw. Is it worth the money for what you're getting as far as repairability and access to parts? Or is this saw for $100 probably never going to break based on how you're using it, and probably going to last you to where the replacement parts are sort of irrelevant? No competition will present with a better shoe. They might present with one just as good, but probably not one better. This is really nice, really wide, really well put together. The Milwaukee, which would probably, if I were spending my money, be the saw I'd buy just because I know the repair house down the road has the parts for it. Its shoe is made out of stamped stainless, and it is known to be a failure point on the saw. So really nice shoe on this saw, really good weight, nice motor size. We'll take it apart later and look at the bearings inside the thing. A negative of this saw, again, 37 RPM, 100 RPMs. This is a metal cutting saw. They advertise it as multi-material, but it's a metal cutting saw. A negative, no chip tray. Now what it does have is there is a vacuum port here for you to put your vacuum hose on. I'll do some cutting without it and I'll do some cutting with it and we'll see what we think about it. Before I attach my vacuum to this thing, we're gonna see what the heat of the chips is because I don't wanna melt my vacuum hose to say I didn't have to sweep the shop floor. The blade it comes with is an Evolution branded blade. It's a 16 tooth blade. It's a 5,000 RPM max on the blade. Kerf is decent as far as thickness. I don't know, guys, it looks like a good looking blade. It's got some sort of heat treat coating on the cutting edge. And it's got some followers to make sure you don't take too big of a bite. That's what this little jump is so you don't just dig in and get a whole tooth full of metal. The blade design looks good. That said, there are other blades out there that look good too. We'll actually cut with this one and see what we think about it. Okay guys, the saw is plugged in. If you're thinking a metal cutting circular saw sounds sort of dangerous, I agree with you. I will be wearing TIG gloves, a welding shirt, jeans, a full face shield, and hearing protection while I make this cut. And I'm also going to cut from that side coming this way, so that way the majority of the shoe sits on the metal that's not going to drop. I've got this cardboard box under the metal plate we're cutting so that it can catch the cutoff. And also we will be cutting, this is 3/8 plate, this is not 1/4 inch, so we're above specification for the saw. So all of that matters, but the bottom line is that if you're gonna buy this thing to use it, you're gonna use it, and you're not gonna, oh, it's cool, it's 3/8, let's not cut it. We're not gonna do that. And also, I can tell you for a fact, this is a $100 saw, but what it competes against, the Milwaukee, the MK Morse, they're cutting 1-inch plate with those saws, regardless of what the manufacturer's recommendation says. There are places in town with that Milwaukee saw that are cutting 3/4 plate all day, every day. So we're gonna actually take a cut off of this thing, and depending on how it does, if it doesn't seem lethal, we're gonna put 2 pieces together and we're gonna cut 2 at the same time. Let's see how it works out. Okay, let's look at our cut. So the cut's very nice, very clean. I did get a little chatter in here at the beginning. That was probably my fault. Ultimately, real nice looking cut. Nice carbide cut. Now let's look at the blade. The blade does show some wear. I'll be the first to tell you there is some wear on that blade. See, those teeth were nice and pointy, and there is a little bit of rounding. I imagine I'll get 1 cut at a double stack, and that'll be it, if it'll make it. There's no saw safety, there's no lock to release the blade. Now, I'm sure there'll be some old farts that'll see this, no safety on the blade, and they'll say, oh, that's just what I've been looking for. Well, that's a bad idea. That's why they put one on in the first place. Another negative I can tell you is not having a chip tray sucks. Even with a full face shield, I got hit in the face with a chip ricocheting off my welding shirt. So I will have my hood down even lower for this cut. There she goes. All right, boys, I locked her up. I really put the blade through the paces. We're going to plug this thing. Okay, let's look at our blade. So again, the saw's unplugged right now. Not very hot. Definitely wouldn't want to just sit on it with your fingers, but not super hot. Again, this saw is unplugged. Definitely got some chip wear on some teeth. I definitely locked it up. Again, that lockup was probably my fault because as I got to the end of the cut, this base piece here wasn't connected. And I think what happened is I got a little sideways with the native pieces, and that's what caused the lockup. So that one chipped tooth that I saw, I'm gonna blame on me and my poor setup. Guys, the saw worked. The saw's recommended for 1/4 inch, and this is our cut quality. That is weld ready. That is completely, not completely cool to the touch, but pretty dang cool to the touch. And you can see our wear. This is kind of neat. So this is the beginning of our cut, nice and shiny. And then we start getting into more of an abrasive pattern as that carbide starts to break down. And I think that blade would still be good for a lot of cuts. Sorry for the camera hit there. I think that blade would still be good for a bunch of cuts. I don't think that blade is a bad blade. I don't know, I kind of like the saw. I will tell you that if I was buying a metal cutting saw, I would not buy this saw for this purpose. If I was buying a saw, however, where I was going to probably make 10 foot long cuts in 3/8 in my life, and I was going to mostly be cutting plywood, MDF, that sort of thing, I don't see any reason right now not to buy this saw. We're going to go ahead and take the time to take it apart, open it up, look at the bearings, and we may find it's a bunch of junk in there. But I got a feeling we're going to find out it's pretty stout. There it is, boys. The Evolution Power Tools saw has petered out. I haven't made 1.5 yards of cuts. Now, I did make some cuts that were too long for the thing, or too deep for the thing, but she's a dead one. We will dissect it and see what we got here. Well, guys, today's like a month detached from the roasty toasty event you just saw. All I know to tell you is got to go to work to keep the lights on in the shop, so that's what we did. So we're going to open this up and see what we did. I expect I'll burn the commutator. Let's see. Yeah, that brush looks roasty toasty. I can tell you already I'll burn the commutator. Won't really have to get very far into her to know. Yeah, this brush doesn't even want to pop up. It might be all the way eaten up. Oh, no, it's not. Well, there she goes. Oh, look at the track. I don't know if you saw that. Oh, so here's what we've done. So this is a problem not related to the stoutness of the motor. Let me see if I can show you what's falling out of the old girl. So this is what I'm getting out. Those are chips. Those are chips from the part I was cutting. So the problem may actually be the design of the machine with regard to ejecting chips. All right, let's get a little further into her and see what we get. Already we know that metal contamination in the motor was the issue, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's not Evolution Power Tools' fault. if this thing's made to cut metal, it needs to be made to not suck in the chips like a vacuum cleaner. And of course, they make this thing a total pain in the butt to get into. And it does not look bad though. There is some ultra mild galling. I mean, very, very, very mild galling on the commutator. And this is repairable very easily. So, let me see if I can show you this. I can't show you that. I gotta take it apart. I'm gonna take it apart and then we'll come back to the doodly-doo, to the screen. Need more of a long distance relationship there. Ha! If it's just one or two bars that are smoked, no big deal. It should still run as long as they're not like right next to each other. But this is repairable. You see how these little copper ends are bent over at the base of the commutator? That's a tang type commutator. So most any electric motor repair company can repair this pretty easily. They just basically peel those things open, pull the wires apart, glue on another commutator, and you're off to the races. So that is nice that you can repair the saw pretty easily, but none of the commutator bars actually seem burnt. Maybe right in this area here, but I doubt it. And as far as the gearbox, since I'm in here, I can show you that. The gearbox is basically a one gear deal. Now normally I'd say that's very inferior, except that I know it works in countless chop saws to have just this one little simple gear reduction. So this is a 3,000 RPM motor, probably 3,600 RPM motor, and then you get the reduction here. You got a big bull gear and a little pinion gear. And if you wonder which one's the bull and the pinion, the big one's the bull and the little one's the pinion. Actually, I think it's the one that does the pushing is the pinion gear, and the one that does the turning as a result of the pinion is the bull. But in this case, it also works out that the big one and the little one are you get it. So we can actually probably put this thing back together with a little bit of a cleanup, and it'll work. The problem is chip interaction. Chips got into this thing and should not have. And basically, chips are guaranteed to get into this thing. Either airflow comes in here and up in here where my finger is here, there's some venting, and goes against the fan and through the fan, because this shield makes it so, through this part of the fan here that I'm touching. Let me zoom you in so you can see it. See those veins in there? So through this, around the armature, and out the back end orange cap that I took off in the first place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the commutator. I'm going to clean up these brushes a wee bit, not a whole lot, because they're kind of worn in a nice pattern. And we'll put it back together, see if it runs, and if it runs, then we know what the problem was. It was chip interference, and we can feel the airflow and know if this thing's designed to fail, or if I just got unlucky and got some chips in where I shouldn't have. Now, if airflow is through this way, in other words, in this way and out near the front of the saw, the solution's fairly easy. Just a piece of pantyhose or something along this. As sexy as that sounds to have pantyhose hanging off the back of your saw, a piece of pantyhose over this will fix the problem. You won't suck chips in anymore. So I'm gonna clean it up, put it back together, and we'll see what she does. Okay, I've got her back together. Got the commutator cleaned up a little bit, cleaned up the brushes a little bit. Again, I was mostly looking for no more steel contamination in there. Blew it out really good. There was a lot of dust that came out of it. So I don't think this thing does a very good job of filtering itself or blowing the trash out of itself. That said, its design is not terribly different or really any different from most other saws of its design or its class. So I don't expect that they could have done much different and fallen outside the standard. They could have done a lot different. There could be a filter in there. But my point is that even though it got some trash in it, the design's not terribly different from other saws. Other saws may very well have had the same fate under the same conditions. That said, the proper metal cutting saws that are made purpose built for this, like the Milwaukee, the ventilation system in them is different, such that they've considered the chip factor. So it's back together, it's plugged in. I'm going to give it a squeeze and see what happens. So what you're seeing there is that the commutator still has some galling in it, and it's going to eat into those brushes. One of two things will happen. Either one, the brushes would basically be chewed up at a fast rate, and the saw would need brushes more frequently. A second thing that would happen is that the commutator would wear in, and that would take care of the problem. A third thing that would happen, which is what's going to happen, is I'm going to take the thing apart again and more thoroughly clean the commutator such that that doesn't happen. But just one more time because it's kind of cool to look at. And if you're wondering, how do I know it's the commutator and not the brush? The reason being is because when you look at the commutator, you can see there's these very specific spots where it's grabbing on the brush, and it grabs on both brushes. So in other words, when you look at the left brush or the right brush, depending on where your left and right is, they're both sparking at the same place. If it was a brush that was boogered up, that one brush would be doing some crazy stuff and the other brush would be behaving reasonably well. So we know it's the commutator needs a little love. So I'm going to go ahead and take it apart and polish it up, and we'll see what happens. Okay, apart, back together, much higher grade polish on the commutator. Brushes cleaned up. Oh, I guess I ought to put the brushes back in. There's one. Okay, so it's back plugged in. I went over the commutator with some 400 grit Cubitron paper, and then I went over it with some 1000 grit, and I did the same thing to the brushes. Guess we'll see what we've got here. I did run it already, and my camera was dead, so that's why the commutator already looks nice and brown or carbon colored. Anyhow, I'll show you what we've got and how you can tell if you've got a commutator or a brush issue here. So you saw before that the spark pattern was the same on both brushes. That indicates that the commutator needs to be cleaned up a little bit. Now I'll run it again and I'll show you what we got. Okay, so you saw how this brush here was shooting sparks far, far across the commutator, and this brush here, all the energy was staying right near the commutator. So that lets you know the commutator is okay, and that this brush is pretty decently clean. This brush may need to be cleaned some more, but probably it's a little galled from when the commutator was tore up, and it just needs to seat itself. It could have some steel contamination, but odds are it'll just burn itself in and it'll be fine. It's definitely something to watch. You know, if 10, 12 cuts from now it's still sparking like crazy, probably a good idea to pull this brush and have a look at it and see if it's still got, maybe it's got like a little piece of steel impregnated in it or something like that. but again, it'll probably just seat itself over time. So, this review has been rather dramatic. I hope it comes across in the video. I started this review by being very, very optimistic about evolution, and then when the saw petered out, I was very non-optimistic. And now, after looking at it, I am right smack dab in the middle. Ultimately, the saw, I believe, has enough power to cut steel. Ultimately, I believe the saw is a reasonable choice for a hobbyist who wants to spend $100 and have some options in dry cutting. That said, the chip management design is poor. The chip management, the way this side is designed is just like a skill saw, and it's going to work just like a skill saw and throw crap everywhere. And if you're cutting metal, it's going to throw chips everywhere. So much so that they will get sucked into the back end, and it does suck from this way. They will get sucked into the back end, get into the commutator area, and tear the saw up. So you have to not not discount that, and you need to cover this with some pantyhose and a nice rubber band or some double stick tape or something. You've got to put a filter in here. Another thing you could do is there's lots of plastic bars in there. You could actually open it up and literally put a piece of filter paper in there, and or like a piece of Scotch-Brite or something to prevent it from letting trash hit the commutators. Rest of the saw, pretty good. Now people are thinking right now probably, well, I'll just buy a Makita, regular skill saw, and I can get it repaired at the local repair shop. Well, that Makita is probably a 5,000 RPM saw or 5,800 RPM saw, and probably going to burn itself up cutting metal. Um, don't do that. Save your money, buy something else, or put the 120 bucks that you'd spend on that Makita towards a cheap plasma cutter, something along those lines. But if you're just cutting metal or mainly cutting metal, that Makita is going to fail you over time. Or if it cuts what you need it to cut, it's going to burn up blades because it's spinning them so fast. So this probably would be a better option. As far as getting parts for it, I don't know. I imagine Evolution's really working hard to try to have a presence in the U.S. So they may be at a place where they can get parts. So here's where I'm at on this saw. Here's where I'm at. If you're wanting a dry cut, metal cutting circular saw, do not buy this. This is a poor choice for that. This is not where you need to be. If you want a saw where you're going to cut a variety of materials and you don't mind it being a somewhat disposable saw, what I mean is you spend $100 on the saw, and if it lasts a year and a half, you're happy with your purchase, buy this. If you're looking for a true do-all solution in the $100, $150 price point, I can tell you right now, nothing exists. This is not the be-all, end-all. And if you're going to cut metal, and you're mainly cutting metal, bite the bullet and buy a good and proper metal cutting saw, and buy one that is supported by your local tool repair houses. In other words, if you're in a part of the country where all the boys are toting around Makita, buy a Makita. If you're in an area where everybody's toting around Red, buy that. And the reason I say that is because those tool houses they're not catering to that one dude who's got that one saw. They're catering to industry in their area. And that makes sense. So what you want to be toting around is what the guys in your area tote around. And even if it's that fine slugger, if that's what they've got the parts for, and that's what they're prepared to fix, today to have it out for tomorrow morning, get that. Get whatever it takes to be in a tool that's going to be repairable and workable in your area. Here in our neck of the woods, that would be Milwaukee. So if I were buying a metal cutting circular saw for here, I would buy a Milwaukee. And again, if you're looking for something that's a do-all saw, even though this is an attempt at that, that doesn't exist. There's just no one saw that cuts everything and does it well. Unfortunately, for Evolution, their saw fails, in my opinion, at being the perfect do-all saw. Once they get to a place where they are supported by local shops and carried at, say, Home Depot and that sort of thing, and you know, the local places can repair them, then my opinion may shift, and I'd say this is a reasonable saw to purchase. But for right now, guys, this is a regular circular saw with a gear reduction. And that gear reduction, like I say, will help you with blade life and that sort of thing, and torque. But the chip management's not there. The support for failures or breakage is not there. It's just not perfect. One other thing I want to talk about this saw. Now, this is important and pretty dirty. When you go on Amazon, and I suggest you do it right now, go on Amazon and attempt to write a review of this saw. Whatever you want on the saw, right? You know, I watched a video on this saw, and this is what it had to say. Whatever you want, try to write a review. You'll find that there's about 18 reviews on this saw, okay? And what you'll see is all of those reviews are by paid reviewers or reviewers who got the tool for free, just like me. And all the reviews are just gleaming. Oh, it cuts. You know I've never touched steel before, but I just cut steel one time with this saw, one time ever, and it cut steel. So it must be awesome. Buy this saw. And then a guy who's seen this video, when I tried to write a review on this saw, it blocked me. It said because of unusual activity, only verified purchasers can write a review on the saw. So basically, they're blocking reviews to make the saw look better than it is. And I would imagine that originated with a complaint from Evolution. Man, Amazon, this is dirty. You know, let the review be written. Review the review. Because if you come to the link of my video and you see he's holding the saw, he definitely reviewed the saw. He took it apart, the saw. This is a legitimate review. And I'm giving the thing 2 stars, 3 stars. Who knows what I'd have done because they blocked me. We're in business. You know, this is a legitimate review. Amazon buyers need to be able to see this review. But the way they're blocking this review is dirty. It's disingenuous. I'm going to say that that behavior from Evolution is a big thumbs down, and because of that less than ideal behavior, I'm going to say do not buy Evolution power tools. Stick with big boys like Milwaukee and Makita and that sort of thing. Evolution, I think you owe the public an apology because blocking reviews blocks people from getting a true picture of the quality of your equipment here. And it's not bad quality, it's just not perfect. So thanks, guys. If you enjoyed the review, click like, click comment, subscribe, tell me what you think about it. Thanks, boys.